Very well, I would say. As the EU leaders came in this morning, they all broadly welcomed the result. They really wanted a decisive result here that would give Johnson a clear majority to approve the deal that he and the EU leaders here agreed. So you could really see, I mean, they were quite pleased with the results. Now, they all say they're not happy that Brexit is happening, but after 3 years of uncertainty, they are happy that at least in this first stage of Brexit, we now have some clarity. Now, they are expected to shortly adopt conclusions that say that they want to start those negotiations on the future relationship between the UK and the EU as quickly as possible after that Brexit date of January 31st. Of course, the stated deadline of the deal to reach that future free trade agreement is the end of next year. Nobody here thinks that's actually possible, even though Johnson on the campaign trail was saying he is certain he could get something agreed by then. And so they are expecting the UK to ask for an extension to have some more time for the transition period to agree that free trade deal. That request has to come by the 1st of July. So that will be the next kind of cliff edge if Brexit does go ahead as expected on January 31st. The next big question is whether the UK, whether Johnson will request an extension of 2 years to that transition period, and during which time the UK is still subject to EU law. He said on the campaign trail he wouldn't do it, but the size of his majority suggests that he probably could go back on that promise without suffering too many political consequences.
And Dave, Brexit, though, not the only headline issue at this summit. There's also what's known as the Green Deal. Now, today, the European Union has agreed to aim for carbon neutrality by 2050. That came not without a bit of reluctance by some member states. Tell us a bit more.
Yeah, it was an agreement with a caveat. They did release conclusions last night that endorsed this target of completely decarbonizing the European Union by 2050. It gets to net zero emissions. That means whatever small amount of emissions are left would be abated by things that suck in carbon, like forests or carbon capture and storage. But Poland, which has been vetoing these conclusions for 6 months, still would not relent. Hungary and the Czech Republic did end their opposition last night, but Poland hung out. So what they decided to do was issue the conclusions, but note that one country, Poland, doesn't agree with them. Now, this opposition from Poland is largely symbolic. For these types of big EU issues, they like to get unanimous backing from all of the leaders for the Commission to put forward a proposal. But it's not legally necessary. And President von der Leyen at the Commission has said they will go ahead with a binding piece of legislation to make this target official in March, whether or not they got unanimous approval from the Council today. So we can expect that legislation to go forward. That legislation does not need unanimous approval. It only needs majority approval. So Poland will be subject to it, whether or not they agree to it. Of course, the EU doesn't want to do it that way because in the past they've had unpleasant experiences, most notably with the migration resettlement agreement where Hungary and some other countries were overridden with that, and that has caused all kinds of headaches. So they will still hope that they can get Poland to give its political assent to this eventually. But even if they don't, that 2050 target is still going to go ahead.
All right, Dave Keating for us there in Brussels. Thank you very much indeed.